Dr. Elena Vasquez had always been patient. During her 23 years of xenobiology research, she had endured funding cuts, academic politics, and the general dismissiveness that came with being one of the few humans working in galactic scientific circles. The Zephyrians questioned her methodology. The Velkari doubted her intelligence. The crystalline Nethys barely acknowledged her existence. But patience, as Elena had learned from her grandmother's old Earth proverb, was not infinite. The breaking point came during the annual Galactic Science Consortium meeting on Kepler Station. Elena had spent 3 years developing a revolutionary biosynthesis process that could terraform dead worlds in months rather than centuries. Her preliminary results were astounding. Barren planets could bloom with life using a combination of engineered bacteria and quantum-accelerated evolution. She had requested a mere 15 minutes to present her findings. "Request denied," announced High Researcher Zix Thala, her 4 eyes barely glancing up from her holographic notes. The Zephyrian's voice carried the usual condescending tone reserved for lesser species. "The consortium has no time for primitive human speculation." Around the vast circular chamber, representatives from 47 species nodded in agreement. The Velkari delegation chittered among themselves in what Elena recognized as their equivalent of laughter. A Nethi crystal being pulsed with dismissive amber light. "Perhaps," suggested High Researcher Quindar of the Velkari, his mandibles clicking, "the human should focus on more achievable goals, waste management perhaps, or food preparation." More chittering, more dismissive lights, more nodding. Elena stood slowly from her designated spot in the junior researcher section, an area specifically designed for species the consortium deemed intellectually inferior. She had sat there for 6 years, watching breakthrough after breakthrough get ignored because they came from human minds. "I see," she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the chamber's acoustics. "Thank you for your time." She gathered her materials and left. The dismissive chatter continued behind her. What the Galactic Science Consortium didn't know was that Dr. Elena Vasquez had a very particular set of skills developed during her years on frontier worlds. More importantly, they had never bothered to read the classified sections of her file, the parts that detailed her previous career as a terraforming engineer for the human colonial defense. For Elena didn't return to Earth. Instead, she took her research to the Outer Rim, to the dead worlds that no one wanted, that no one cared about. She set up a modest laboratory on Kepler 4042c, a barren rock that the galactic surveys had written off as permanently uninhabitable. Working alone, she refined her process. The engineered bacteria were just the beginning. Elena had discovered something the other species missed in their rigid thinking. Life didn't just want to exist, it wanted to thrive. And when given the right quantum nudge, it would adapt at impossible speeds. The first signs appeared after 2 months. Primitive mosses began covering the rocky outcroppings around her lab. Within 4 months, the atmosphere showed measurable increases in oxygen. By month 6, the first proto-trees were sprouting. But Elena wasn't finished. Patience might have its limits, but human ingenuity certainly didn't. She began seeding other dead worlds. Kepler 442, Wolf 359c, the barren moons of the Trappist system. Each time she refined the process, made it faster, more efficient. What had started as a terraforming technique was becoming something else entirely. A weapon of creation so powerful, it defied galactic understanding. The consortium noticed when long-range sensors detected massive atmospheric changes across 17 previously dead worlds. They noticed more when trade routes had to be rerouted around planets that were now teeming with life. They noticed most of all when independent colonists started flocking to Elena's worlds, establishing thriving settlements in record time. "Impossible," High Researcher Zix Thala declared when the reports reached her desk. "Terraforming takes centuries. There must be some mistake." But there was no mistake. Elena had done something that violated everything the galaxy thought it knew about planetary engineering. She had taken their dismissal, their condescension, their casual cruelty, and turned it into fuel for the impossible. The emergency session of the Galactic Science Consortium was called 6 months later. Representatives from 47 species gathered not to dismiss human research, but to desperately understand it. Long-range scans showed that Elena's worlds weren't just habitable. They were paradise planets with biodiversity indices that exceeded even the galaxy's most prized garden worlds. "We must establish contact," insisted Quindar, his mandibles no longer clicking with amusement. This technology could revolutionize galactic civilization. Elena received their transmission while standing in a field of flowers that hadn't existed a year ago. The air around her hummed with the songs of creatures that had evolved in fast forward, each one perfectly adapted to its new world. Above, the sunset painted the sky in colors that no amount of academic dismissal could diminish. The message was formal, respectful, desperate. The consortium requested, no, begged, for a meeting to discuss her revolutionary discoveries. They offered full research grants, unlimited funding, a seat on the High Council, anything she desired. Elena's response was brief. Request denied. The consortium has no time for primitive human speculation. She never answered another of their transmissions. Instead, she continued her work, turning the galaxy's forgotten places into gardens. Human colonies flourished on worlds that had been written off as worthless. Her biosynthesis process became legendary among the frontier settlements, though Elena herself remained a ghost, a human scientist who had proven that patience might have limits, but human determination did not. The Galactic Science Consortium still meets annually, but now they have a new policy. No research proposal is dismissed without full consideration, especially if it comes from a human scientist. They learned far too late that there was a difference between patience and surrender, and in the Outer Rim, on worlds that bloom with impossible life, the galaxy's newest gardens serve as a permanent reminder of what happens when you mistake human patience for human weakness. Elena still works among her flowers, still perfects her art of creation. She has never forgotten the dismissive chittering, the condescending lights, the casual cruelty of that day. She simply chose to transform it into something beautiful. That perhaps is the most human response of all.